Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 426 for the 29th of Teves in a regular year. I once met somebody who came from a very wealthy family. His parents were entrepreneurs, and they established a business that did really well, to such a point that none of their children had to worry about money for the rest of their lives. They established what's known as a trust fund. You know, we've all heard about these people, these trust fund babies who go around and don't have to work a day of their lives. They're taken care of from the moment they're born till the day that they die. Now, trust fund babies get a really bad rap because we kind of picture them as being like these lazy people who just sit around all day partying, having fun, not being very productive or whatever, and just like feeding off of their inheritance that they received from their parents. This particular person was interesting in the sense that he actually didn't just sit around all day doing nothing. He uses his time in a pretty productive way, being involved in various creative projects, philanthropic projects, all kinds of things that could hopefully benefit society. However, there is a difference between the way that he works and the way that the vast majority of us work, in the sense that he doesn't really have the same stress that we all do in terms of having to worry about, where his next paycheck's going to come from. Will he make enough money to survive? That's kind of like taken care of, than anything else that he does. It's, he can actually be fully immersed in his work in a more kind of pure sense, in a way, without having to worry about the monetary aspect of it. So now when you think about it this way, then having a trust fund is really nice, right? We probably all do that anyways, right? We'd all love to have a trust fund that we could rely on. Now, what if I were to tell you that we all do? Maybe not a monetary trust fund in this sense, but we all have a spiritual trust fund that we were all born with. We were all born with, so to speak, a spiritual spoon in our mouths. What am I talking about? I'm talking about an inheritance that we received, that every single Jewish person has, from our forefathers, from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who they, just like Lahavdil, this person's parents were entrepreneurs and they worked really hard so that their children can now benefit from this hard work. So too did our forefathers work incredibly hard to develop such a strong and deep connection with God, such a point that they are referred to as being chariots, where their whole entire being, their whole entire bodies and lives served merely as just being embodiments, channels for God's will, that this got passed down to all of us. We may not all be fully conscious of this inheritance that we have, but we all have it. And what we're going to be learning about today is this ability that we all have to awaken this consciousness within ourselves of this spiritual trust fund that we all have, and that with this awareness of the spiritual trust fund that we have, we can make this statement of this thing being very near to you, this closeness to God that we've been describing. It can become even more real. Because up until now, if you've been following along the podcast, then the Alter Rebbe has kind of been giving a prescription for this teaching of this thing being very near to you in your heart, mouth and in your heart to do it. And he said that what it really involves is intellectual meditation, using our minds to think about God, to contemplate about God, really and analyze the world, analyze our lives, study Torah, all that kind of stuff. And that will eventually translate into a love of God and a fear of God, whether it's felt in our hearts in a manifest way, in a really passionate way, or even if not, it will translate into action. Even if we're not feeling it, the fact that we're so engaged in studying about God and thinking about God, if it leads to us keeping Torah and mitzvahs, that means that the love is there. But today, the Alter Rebbe is going to take another angle at all of this, because that is all well and good, this idea of intellectual meditation and all that, if you're an intellectual type of person, if you like to study, if you like to read, if you like to learn, if you have the mental capacity to do so. But what about those people that don't? Not everybody is like that. Not everybody is an intellect by nature. This is not, while all Jews are supposed to study Torah, learning is not something that is attractive to all people, and not all people get the same thing out of learning in the same intellectual way. So what about those kind of people? So today the Alter Rebbe gives a prescription for these kind of people and gives them this reassurance that in fact it's okay, and it's more than okay, because the good news is that they were born with a trust fund. They were born just like all Jews. We were all born with this innate love of God that we all have in our hearts, and all we need to do is to recognize that, and by recognizing that we can actually awaken it within us, and this can lead us to serving God. So for context, we're going to be beginning a new chapter today, chapter 18 of Likkutei Amarim. So the Alter Rebbe begins, and he says that he's going to analyze the word me'od that we find in that pasuk that we've been discussing, that this thing is very near to you. Me'od is very. So what do we mean by very? So he says that when we use this word, it's not just that this thing is near to you, but this thing is very near to you. So what's implied by this is that there's a level of ease with it, that even somebody, that this applies for all people, even somebody who doesn't know much about God and doesn't have a heart to understand the greatness of God, to be able to birth within themselves the feeling of love, of fear and love, even in their mind, right? So we spoke about in a previous section, we spoke about this idea of somebody who may not feel a sense of passionate love and fear of God in their heart, but at least they can birth it in their minds. This is like what we call tvuna before. So what about such a person who's not able to do that? Nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, even for such a person, this thing is very near to them. What is very near to them? That they are able to guard and to do all the mitzvahs of the Torah, including learning Torah, Talmud Torah in Hebrew, and in their mouth and in their heart, from the depth of their heart, in a true sense, really authentic, not to just go about it by rote, but to actually have an authentic connection with God that involves fear and love of God. So how is this possible? So the Alter Rebbe says that this is possible. So he focuses first on the love aspect, that this love that's being referenced here is what's known as the ahava mesuteret, the hidden love that's found in the hearts of all Jews, because this is an inheritance that comes to us from our forefathers. So now, in order to really understand what this love is, says the Alter Rebbe, we have to understand the root of this love and what it's all about. And how is it that we get this inheritance, and how does it also encompass fear within it? How does this love also include the fear aspect? So the Alter Rebbe says that the idea is that the forefathers, our forefathers, are referred to as being the chariot of God, the Merkava in Hebrew. And so thus, by virtue of being a chariot of God, they had this ability to draw down the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, the three aspects of the soul, to all generations that came after them, from the 10 holy spheros that are found in the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya, to every single Jewish person according to their level and according to their deeds. So this means even those people, even the very lowliest of souls. So the Alter Rebbe gives an example of what's called a kal shebekalim, the unworthiest of men, very simple Jews, really that are just very, on the bottom level of when we think of simplicity. And also not only that, even push Israel, the sinners of the Jewish people. So not very good people. So even you think about the worst Jews, quote unquote, we don't, as a side note, we don't actually know who the worst Jews are. This is a very subjective judgment on our part when we think this is a good Jew, this is a bad Jew. We don't really know. But let's say somebody who's really not a very good Jew, not a very good person, nevertheless, by virtue of them being a Jew, and by virtue of them getting this inheritance from our forefathers, so when they are intimate with another person, when these two people engage in intercourse, then this causes a drawing down of a soul that comes from Malchus of Asiya. And so now it's going to get a little technical here and a little Kabbalistic, but bear with it. So this level of Malchus of Asiya is the lowest level that's found in the holiness of Asiya. So it's the lowest level on the one hand. Nevertheless, since it's still part of the 10 spheros, the 10 holy spheros. So Malchus is the lowest of all the spheros, but it's part of the spheros. It's part of these holy spheros, these emanating forces that manifest godliness. And so since it's part of the spheros, it's made up of all of them. And so as we've spoken about this previously, that all of the spheros encompass all the other spheros. There's an inter-inclusive aspect of it, which means that it also contains within it the chokhmah of the world of Asiya. And within this chokhmah of Asiya is found the chokhmah of Malchus, of Atzilus, which is the highest of all worlds. So this is a big theme that comes up a lot in Chassidus and Kabbalah, that there's like a chain connection between all of the spiritual worlds. There might be different levels of revelation in different worlds, but the source of all of them is the same. They all can be traced back to Atzilus, or to be more specific, Malchus of Atzilus. But Malchus of Atzilus is a part of Atzilus, and Atzilus is one with God. And this Malchus of Atzilus contains within it the Chokhmah of Atzilus. And this Chokhmah of Atzilus is where the light of God himself shines. So, and the Alter Rebbe brings a proof for this from Mishlei, chapter 3, verse 19, where it says, Hashem b'chokhmah yesad aretz. God in his wisdom founded the earth. And then another pasuk, this time from Tehillim, chapter 104, verse 24, Kulam b'chokhmah asita. You made them all with chokhmah. So meaning to say that, like, if we use this logic and we recognize this logic, it means that God himself is vested within every single Jewish soul by way of an aspect of chokhmah. And this is regardless of who this Jewish person is. It doesn't matter what their level is, their level of intellect, their IQ, their spiritual standing, anything like that. And it's vested within the aspect of their chokhmah, which every person's chokhmah is like kind of like the root source from which all the vitality of the entire soul comes from, in order to vitalize it from head to toe. And the Alter Rebbe again brings a proof for this from Echa, chapter 7, verse 12, where it says, "HaChokhmah tichayeh ba'aleha," that wisdom gives life to those who possess it. So it's like our entire life force comes from this aspect of chokhmah. And then in conclusion here, the Alter Rebbe brings this really interesting parentheses, where he says that there's, even at times, that we find sometimes very, very high souls are born to sinners, great sinners within the Jewish people. So why is this? Because there's sort of like this idea, like there's this constant like battle going on between the forces of good and evil, between the forces that reveal godliness, the forces that conceal godliness. And this is written about in the Sefer Gilgulim, by the way, of the Arizal, the book about reincarnation. So basically, there are really, really high souls that want to be born, but there's a lot of resistance to them being born from the forces of the klipos, from the forces of the other side. But then when you have two parents who are not the best people, who are, people who don't really live the right way and that kind of thing. So sometimes in that case, the klipos can say, you know what? Actually, we could have them this high soul be born. Let's have it be born to these very lowly people, because chances are they're going to be affected by their environment, and they're going to grow, and they're going to be so heavily influenced by their negative parenting that their goodness will not manifest. But in fact, they're wrong. And often in many cases, because if somebody has a very, very high soul, sometimes the level of that soul can actually overcome their environment. And this is why we find in Chumash and also in real life often that very special people are often born into very, very low environments. So that's the end of the section for today. And so just the takeaway from all this is this idea of this recognition of the fact that we all have within us an innate love of God. And this innate love of God, we're going to learn more about it tomorrow. But this innate love of God is what gives us access to be able to serve God and to be able to connect with God in a way that is not only close to us, but very close to us. Even if we don't have the intellectual capacity, even if we haven't, been able to really learn and contemplate to such a point that we've birthed these feelings within our minds, there's another kind of love. So there's the love that we generate within our minds, and then there's this other innate kind of love. And we'll see as we go further into the Tanya, this is like a kind of ongoing theme that comes up a lot, are these two aspects of the love of God, the aspect of love of God that is generated through our intellect, and then the more innate, natural kind of love that's hidden within our hearts. So that's it for today, and we'll continue along these lines tomorrow, and I'll speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.